Jai Hind all. The topic which we are going to discuss today is virtualization for cloud computing. So basically, what is virtualization? As we are aware, in the case of the cloud computing, we have seen the concept of multi-tenancy and the resource pooling. We have seen that multiple customers, they are using the resources, and these resources, we have seen the term virtualization earlier also, that these resources got virtualized. We create the virtual machines corresponding to the users, and we allocate these virtual machines to the users, and the users, they work on this virtual machines. These virtual machines, they can be created on the IaaS level, it can be created on PaaS level, it can be created on the SaaS level. Depending upon the service which we are using for the cloud, we are virtualizing the resources. So basically, what is virtualization in cloud computing? So what is virtualization? It is the creation of a virtual, that is, we are not having the physical copy of the hardware. What we are doing, we are creating the logical copy of the hardware. This is what we are saying when we are saying creation of a virtual. Rather than actual version of something. And this something, it can be any resource, it can be a server, it can be a desktop, it can be a network, it can be a services. So in other words, what we can say, virtualization is a technique which allows to share a single physical instance of a resource or an application among multiple customers and organization. That is how we have achieved the concept of multi-tenancy. It does by assigning a logical name to a physical storage and providing a pointer to that physical resource when demanded. That is, when we are creating the logical copy. And these logical, just for example, as you have seen in a file or in anything, you provide a logical name to that file, and from the OS level, these file names, they are recognized by file IDs. They are the pointers through which your OS recognizes a file. Similarly, when we are creating a logical copy of the physical instance, then these logical copies, they got a logical name as well as they are provided a pointer which is pointing to the physical resource when it is demanded. So this is a concept of virtualization. That is, we are having a physical resource. On the physical resource, this is a software through which we are doing the virtualization, and these this hypervisor or the virtual, another name, virtual machine monitor, what it will do, it will create these virtual machines. If you look here, it is the exact copy of what we are having here. So this is the physical instance, and in this case, what we have done, we have created three virtual copies, or the three virtual machines. These virtual copies, they are known by the name virtual machines. And what we achieve through this, it reduces hardware utilization, it reduces energy, it reduces cost, which makes it possible to run multiple applications and various OS on the same server at the same time. So it increases utilization, efficient utilization of the resources, flexibility of existing computer hardware. Now the thing comes, what is the concept behind the virtualization? So the creation of a virtual machine over existing OS and the hardware is known as hardware virtualization, which we will see later on. We are having different categories of the virtualization. As in this case, what we have seen, we have not created the hardware virtualization in this case, but there is a category of the hardware virtualization in which we virtualize the hardware also. So a virtual machine, it provides an environment that is logically separated from the underlying hardware. The host virtual machine and the guest virtual machines are the two components that make up a virtual machine. So in this case, this is my host and these are my guest machines which I have created. The host and the guest. So the guest VM is an independent instance of an OS and associated software and information, whereas in the case of the host virtual machine is the hardware that provides it with computing resources such as processing power, disk, input-output activity and input-output resources and so on. Why we require the virtualization? The very first thing is it saves resources and money. As we have seen in this case, we are having a single physical resource and on this we have created the multiple copies. So what it says, on a single instance, physical instance, we are running multiple logical copies, that is we are supporting n number of users on the same hardware. So it is a cost saving concept and it saves the resources also. It simplifies the management of the data center, no doubt. On the data center part, we are having the resources localized on the CSP side and that person is responsible for managing the resources and that person is responsible to manage the virtual machines which are being allocated to the users. How the virtualization being done? It is done by CSP. It increased the IT productivity and the efficiency. Now with no hassle and weariness, the big firms, all the technical and the software advancement can be done with increased efficiency. It is easy disaster recovery. If in case there is an event of the system crash, then in the case of the virtualization, only virtual machine crashes and there is no impact on the physical hardware. And in turn, it will increase the security. For instance, if you want to develop a security related application and you want to see what is the impact of attacks or the threats on that security application. For example, you are developing antivirus. Now you want to check what is the efficiency, how it is performing. So you need to give a flow of attacks to that antivirus so that it can detect those attacks, those signatures. Now what will happen if you are testing such an environment on the actual hardware and one of the signature it got unidentified by your developed antivirus, then in that case your actual hardware it got affected. But now see the scenario where you are performing the same activity but on the virtual machine. Then in that case, if the attack signature got unidentified, then in that case only the virtual machine, that is the logical copy, got affected and your actual hardware it remains unaffected. So it increases the security. Now the thing comes, how this concept got possible. So the software which is responsible for virtualizing the resources is known as hypervisor. It is also known as virtualization manager. And this particular software, it is sitting between the hardware and the OS and assigns what kind of applications you want to install in that virtualization machine, what kind of hardware you want to virtualize. All the things is being decided in this hypervisor. Now, what are the advantages of the virtualization? The very first thing is deploying the servers is too fast, because in this case what is happening, since your server, once it got boot up, then ultimately what we are doing, we are creating the virtual servers on that physical server and then we are providing these physical server to the organization. So what is happening, it is easy to deploy because these are the logical copies. So it take a time just similar to your software initialization, because it ultimately what it is a software. So it is a soft copy. So deploying such servers It is very fast. It saves the energy. As we have seen on the single physical machine, we are having multiple virtual machines, so it is saving the energy also, because ultimately only the actual hardware it is consuming the energy, and the virtual machines that is running on that actual hardware. Disaster recovery, we have seen that it is easy to recover from the disaster, as we have seen that if some disaster happen, then until and unless your physical server got affected, and some mishappening happen at your virtual machine level, then in that case you can easily recover the data. Using virtualization for the efficient hardware utilization, we have seen that virtualization concept, it leads to the efficient management, efficient allocation of the resources. Using virtualization to increase the availability, how? It offer a number of advanced features that are not found on physical servers, which increase the uptime and availability of the virtual machine. Although vendor features name may be different, they usually offer the capabilities, for example, live migration, storage migration, fault tolerance, high availability, and distributed resource scheduling. Such kind of parameters, they are being handled automatically by the CSP. These technologies give virtual machines ability to recover from unplanned outages. Also, the ability to move a virtual machine from one server to another is perhaps one of the greatest advantage for which has increased the maximized the concept of increased availability. As a technology continues to mature to the point where it can do a long distance migration, such as being able to move a VM from one data center to another, no network latency is involved, because what we are doing, just like your file transfer, we are migrating the virtual machine to another server, so it will take only that time. Save space in your server room or the data center. For example, if I need 2 racks with 30 physical servers and 4 switches, and by virtualizing, I can reduce half of the space used by the physical servers. Testing and setting up lab environment, as I have already given an example of antivirus testing environment. So you can easily test your applications. You can check how the lab setup can be done, how it can behave in the actual environment by running them or deploying them on the virtual machines. But yes, virtualization do have its own limitations also. The very first disadvantage is extra cost. Maybe we have invested in the virtualization software, and possibly additional hardware may be required to make the virtualization possible. It depends on your existing network. Many businesses have sufficient capacity to accommodate the virtualization without requiring much cash. If you have an infrastructure, then you have to consider an initial renewal budget. So you are already having an IT department or a platform or infrastructure within an organization. Now you want to go with the virtualization, then you need to see what is the cost, and depending on that only you can go with the virtualization concept, because then you need to reinvest in the virtualization software, and sometimes additional hardware may be required. Software licensing. Software licensing is a limitation, but nowadays it poses less you could say disadvantage towards the virtualization, because it is important to check with your vendors to understand how they view the software used in virtualization environment. Learn the new infrastructure. Implementing and managing a virtualized environment will require extra human resource in your department, extra IT personnel in your department, where they have an expertise in this field. High upfront expenditure. When we are implementing a virtualization strategy from the ground up, chances are they are going to have a sink more money into the hardware in the immediate future. While you will save in the long run, implementation can get pricey. That is, during the initial phase, might be it will cost you more. Not all applications are ready for the virtualization. Now, it is very important to note why you are going for the virtualization. If you are going for a virtualization and the softwares which you want to run on that virtualized virtual machine, maybe that your virtual machine is not supporting that concept. So it is important to do some research kind of thing, that is what you want to run, what kind of virtual machines you want to have. Only then you should decide to go for the virtualization. The danger of the server sprawl. Servers, they are easy to deploy in a virtualized environment, so there is always a danger that new servers will be added even if they are not required. Instead of 10 or 20 virtual servers you really need, and you might be having a 30 or 40 servers, then in that case the danger of server sprawling is there. Now come on the next topic, that is types of virtualization. So types of virtualization, we will see what is hardware virtualization, network virtualization, storage, memory, software, data and desktop. In the case of the hardware virtualization, it has been further categorized as full, partial and para, and full is further categorized as bare metal and hosted. In the case of the network, we are having internal network virtualization and the external network virtualization. In the case of the storage, it has been categorized as block and file. Memory, it has been categorized as application level integration and the OS level integration. With the software, we are having OS level application, service, data, that is database, and desktop further categorized as virtual desktop infrastructure and hosted virtual desktop. Let's start with very first category, that is hardware or the server virtualization. It is most common type of virtualization. The basic idea here is to combine many physical servers into one large physical server so that the processor can be used more effectively and efficiently. The OS that is running on a physical server gets converted into a well-defined OS that runs on the virtual machine. So the hypervisor, it controls the processor, memory and other components by allowing different OS to run on the same machine without the need for a source code. What is full virtualization? In it, the complete simulation of the actual hardware takes place to allow the software to run an unmodified guest OS. Whereas in the case of the para, software is unmodified and it is running on a modified OS as a separate system. In the case of the partial, hardware, the software may need modification to run. The next one is network virtualization. In this, physical network resources are divided up among multiple virtual networks. This is useful in applications such as multi-tenant data center environments where each tenant can be allocated multiple virtual machines as well as a virtual network connecting these virtual machines. For example, you want to have a data center for your organization. Instead of having a data center physically available with you, you want to have a data center over the cloud. Then in that case, what will happen? You can have multiple virtual machines, and in your organization you are having multiple employees. Now corresponding to those multiple employees, you want to have different virtual machines corresponding to those users. Now these virtual machines, they need to be interconnected, so network connection is required. Now again, you are creating a network of the virtual machines, so a virtual network connection is required in that case. So basically it refers to the management and monitoring of a computer network as a single managerial entity from a single software based administrator console. It is intended to allow network optimization for data transfer rates, scalability, reliability, flexibility and security. it also automates many network administrative tasks. The intended result of network virtualization provides improved network productivity and efficiency. It combines hardware, appliances, and specific software for the creation and the management of a virtual network. It can aggregate different physical networks into a single logical network. This is the case of your external network virtualization. And when you provide network-like functionality to an OS partition, then it is known as internal network virtualization. So what is internal? Uses software containers to mimic or provide the functionality of a single physical network. It provides only a network-like functionality to a single system. At the OS level, you perform this. Whereas in the case of the external, what is happening? You combine many networks or parts of a network into a virtual unit. The result of these external virtualization is generally a virtual LAN. So a VLAN, it is an aggregation of hosts that communicate with each other as though they were located under the same broadcasting system, but they are located at different places. Next category of virtualization is a storage virtualization. In this, multiple network storage are present as a single storage device. That is, you are having different storage devices. You have formed a network of those storage devices, and to the customer, this network of storage devices, it is hidden from them, and they got a single logical unit of those storage devices. This will lead to the efficient management of the resources. So, advantage, improved storage management in a heterogeneous IT environment, easy updates and better availability of the storage device, downtime got reduced, better storage utilization, automated management is done here with the help of software tools, and we can increase or decrease the customers or you could say even your devices also according to the requirement. How it can be done? You can do the virtualization of storage devices as a host based, and on the network based, and on the array based. What is host based storage virtualization? Here all virtualization and management is done at the host level with the help of software and physical storage. It can be any device or array. The host is made up of multiple hosts which presents virtual drives of a set. Why? We have formed a virtual network of a set to guest machines. It doesn't matter whether they are virtual machines in an enterprise or PC. In the network-based storage, it is the most common form which used nowadays. Devices such as your smart switch or purpose-built server connect to all the storage. In the case of the array-based storage virtualization, here the storage array provides the different types of storage which are physically and used as storage tiers. In general, there are two types of storage virtualization. One is at block level and another one is at file level. That in the case of the block level, you are giving the partition to the users, and these partitions, the users, they are installing their file system and they are working on this. Whereas in the case of the file, what is happening? The file system got virtualized and it is being provided to the users. In case of the memory virtualization, the resource which we are virtualizing here, it is RAM. The implementation of the memory virtualization, the first one is application level integration. In this, what is happening? We are having these contributors. We are having a virtualization software. It is a virtualized memory pool, and the applications of different users, it is working on these virtualized memory pool. So the cluster implementing memory virtualization at the application level. Contributors, they contribute the memory to the pool. Applications read and write data to the pool, maybe using Java or other APIs or a file system APIs. In the case of the OS level, the OS first connects to the memory pool and makes that pooled memory available to the applications. That is, applications, they are not directly interacting with the memory pool. There is an OS, it is interacting with this, and applications, if they want to use the memory pool, then they need to send the command to the OS. What is software virtualization? It is used to enable a complete computer system in order to allow a guest OS to run. For instance, letting Linux to run as a guest that is running on a Windows operating system. We can have at OS level application virtualization and service virtualization. At the OS virtualization, hardware is used which consists of software on which different OS works. In the case of the application virtualization, it encapsulates the computer program within the OS. It can say that application virtualization refer to running an application on a thin client. This thin client runs an environment which is different from what referred to as encapsulating from the OS. In the case of the service virtualization, the DevOps team can use the virtual servers rather than physical one. It emulates the behavior of essential components or the services which we want to virtualize. In the case of the data virtualization, what we are doing, we are virtualizing the database and providing that virtualized database to the user. Desktop virtualization, it is a technology that separates an individual PC application from his or her desktop. The virtualized desktops, they are generally hosted on a remote central server rather than hard drive of the personal computer, because the client server computing model, it is used in virtualizing desktops. Desktop virtualization is also known as client virtualization. What are the benefits? Include the lower TCO, increase security, reduce energy cost, reduce downtime, and it also lead to the central management of the desktop. But the limitations: difficult to maintain, increased downtime in case of network failures, complexity and the cost involved in having a virtual desktop infrastructure, also the security risk is there. This is the reference which I used to for making these slides. Thank you and Jai Hind.